All right, recording has started, and this is the Crossplane community meeting for January 27th, 2022. And that's a special date that has nothing to do with the community, but it's my birthday. So I'll make that as the first announcement that has nothing to do with the project or where anything's going, but I'm happy, so I'll take it. We can keep on filling in the attendees list with folks from the participants. So if folks want to add themselves, we'll go ahead and make sure that that's part of the, gets integrated into the agenda doc. We have not had a community meeting for about a month now because we took a holiday break and then we had a conflict at the last regularly scheduled time when a lot of folks, maintainers were at a separate event. So we are getting back on track here to kick off 2022 and back to our regular cadence of every 2 weeks for the community meeting. So we'll go ahead and get started then with our recent releases. I believe so 1.6, the that minor release was done at the very beginning of the year in 2022. So that 1.6 release is out, and we have done also 2 patches to it since the release itself came out. So we have the release notes available here. I believe Nick was the driver on that release there. Nick, is there anything kind of major you want to touch on for that release that kind of summarizing it for us?
Give me a second to swap it back in. I think I'd mostly just be reading what's on here. I mean, the big sort of warning up the top is the V1 Beta 1 APIs. A bunch of them were removed. We've been sort of tracking those for deprecation and removal in 1.6 for a while. So those are gone. As you can see there, we're also going to get rid of some of the package metadata APIs, the V1 Alpha 1. So those are the things that you put in your crossplane.yaml in your packages, not actual sort of API server-side API types. And I think, yeah, the sort of the only feature, as it were, or the big headline feature of this release was over the last quarter or two, we did a bunch of scale testing to sort of figure out ways that we could make Crossplane a little bit more performant, where in this case, performant means being able to reconcile more composite resources, more managed resources at once, and also sort of when you have a lot of managed resources, drive them to completion readiness more quickly. So we did a bunch of behind the scenes tuning that just will be there whether you do anything or not when you upgrade to 1.6. We also added a flag max reconcile rate that you can see on these release docs to sort of tune that a little bit further. And I forget what I put there, but as you can see, it's sort of in my experiments, sort of quasi-scientifically gets Crossplane about 2 to 5 times faster. I will say that 2 times faster means that you're not. Oh, sorry, I thought Victor was talking to me. 2 times faster is if the providers that you're using haven't been updated. If you also make similar updates to the providers, then that's the 5 times faster. That's everything off the top of my head.
Nick, yeah, thanks for driving that release and for the entire team for getting out that functionality there. So then we had a couple patches. I think that one thing that I wanted a little bit more a better understanding of, and this is to Dan from the 1.6.2 patch that came out recently. I know there's a whole bunch of effort on getting the provider credentials stuff working and with proxies and all that stuff. So is there are there any scenarios we know of now, Dan, that that won't work effectively, or is everything all combinations and permutations we expect it all to be working now?
All except for one, which is not a regression per se. So all situations of pulling using secrets and kind of like just your normal registry config kind of stuff should be working just fine. All cloud provider credentials, so if you're using IRSA or workload identity or something like that, should also be working fine, with the exception of ACR, Azure's container registry. There is still a bug that's actually been addressed, and it actually was addressed right before this release went out. It's fairly small. The reason why it was not included is because we'd had a lot of community members chip in to testing this specific artifact and including it would have bumped a number of other things. We also didn't currently have any users using Azure's container registry. And if they tried, it would have been broken already. So we definitely want to improve that functionality, but we made the trade-off here to go ahead and move forward with an artifact we had confidence in for the release and follow up with that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good approach there, Dan. And thank you for explaining the nuances of that for us. And great work too, also collaborating with the folks on the Go Container Registry project to get some fixes in there also. So yeah, that project is coming along nicely. I really like what they're doing there and the contributions you've made to it as well. All right, so upcoming releases though. So we are working towards a 1.7 release, kind of early in the cycle with, getting the 1.6 out earlier this month and then kind of slowly getting things going for 2022 and planning and things like that. So a little bit early in the cycle there, but I think something that's really exciting, or first note is that as you see on the screen there, that the intended release date there is towards the end of March. So typical cadence of every couple months, at the end of every other month is when the release will be. So it's scheduled right now for March 22nd. So something very exciting, I think, though, is that we'll get into more details about the TerraJet announcement from earlier this week. But with that big milestone for TerraJet, a lot of the Crossplane maintainers will now be having a little bit more bandwidth to start taking on core Crossplane functionality again. So on the roadmap, we will be addressing some of the more higher demand and big impact features now. So it's very exciting to have solved a lot of the concerns around provider coverage and then being able to move back into functionality again. So we're going to see some roadmap improvements starting here in Q1 of this year, and we'll be investing in core Crossplane. Some things to highlight on that specifically. So Hassan is not with us today, but he had already completed a design doc on the pluggable secret stores. And so that will be, we'll be moving to an implementation phase with that. And so that functionality that is described in the design doc there will be something that we'll be expected to see as a delivered feature over the next quarter or so. Another one I think that is of quite big importance is that Nick and Sergen will be driving the custom compositions feature. That one has been a pretty, I think that one has a lot of impact, a lot of value of being able to take compositions and the functionality there to I don't know, say next level. It's kind of like really opening up a lot of functionality there that is not strictly in the DSL for it. So that will be something that Nick and Sergen are driving and putting some of their efforts into. Nick, is there anything that you want to add about timeline, or not necessarily timeline, but deliverables or milestones or feedback that you want from the community, anything like that too?
I just added this to the 1.7 roadmap since it's the end of March to have an alpha implementation. When asked 2 weeks ago, getting this to alpha implementation by the end of Q1 seemed very feasible. Now that I'm committing to a date, I'm inclined to hedge a little bit and say that it's a little bit of a stretch to go to 1.7, but I think we can do it. I would just ask, anyone that's interested or anyone that's had limitations with compositions, please click through to that custom compositions issue and add a comment on it. I think sort of some of the most valuable feedback style that you could give us is effectively just like walking through where composition hasn't worked for you, why you think you would want this feature, like specific scenarios in as much detail as possible. Advise, I would have liked to do this, this, and this, but and I couldn't do it with composition because of X, Y, and Z reason. Would be very, very valuable.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's going to be fantastic to move the project forward for the community. So I'm really glad we're getting some focus time on that one. And yeah, feedback on the experience, as Nick mentioned, would always be useful. And then another one I can think of as well that I believe will be getting some some effort into is the Plugable Web Hooks sort of framework there. That enables a lot of things, like being able to do validations for compositions and other entities in the Crossplane type system. So having a bit of a standardization there or some reusability to be able to more easily do that and have validation in webhooks, et cetera, for other providers will be quite useful. So I believe we'll be spending some time on that also. There's already been some design thinking on that one, and being able to move a lot of these big ideas that we've been pushing for designs on towards implementation is going to be really nice for the project in the next quarter or so. So you can expect to see effort on all of those, during the 1.7 timeframe. As Nick mentioned, maybe some early alpha implementations will be delivered in there. So I think 1.7 should have some interesting things in it as we have, kind of a 2022 prioritization, effort ongoing here. Anybody else want to weigh in on roadmap items or upcoming milestone 1.7 things? Anything on people's minds there? All right, cool. Then we can go ahead and move on to providers then, after our conversation there about some deeper investments we'll be making in core Crossplane. So the biggest thing here for providers is the big announcement from Monday on TerraJet and the set of jet providers and their deep coverage of all of resources in the cloud providers. There is, I'll let somebody else who works more directly on it kind of dive into that. Matthias or Alper, anybody, do you want to kind of talk about the high level big announcement there, since you all had a huge part in it?
Sure. I'll start, and then if anyone want to chime in, add anything, please do. Yeah, we had our announcement with a little bit of champagne and Red Bull, depending on the title of where you are in the world. I had Red Bull. We had the announcement. It's really interesting to see, because obviously from a community perspective, and I don't recognize all folks here, TerraJet was obviously already being aware of, but it's it's really interesting to see of what's kind of like a little bit of promotion can do. So that's like one of my key takeaways, is like, do these announcements and be big about it. I guess one thing that and we can start this on a personal conversation. I'll re-raise this in a larger later call. What we would be interested in just from an outside outbound perspective is like how this was perceived. And how like the community was, outside of Upbound was like perceiving this, if there's anything that we could have done better. But from our perspective, we're really happy about this. We already are seeing some more traction on it. People are starting to use it. There's, if you head over to TerraJet, there are open issues. But nothing that I'm seeing currently blocking for creating these. But just another pretty please give us feedback, give it a try. If you have any thoughts on improvement or further ideas, let us know.
Yeah, awesome. And we have a bunch of links further down in the agenda doc, the content section, for the recording of that live stream and blog posts about it and stuff. So people can get into the nitty-gritty details with all of those links there.
Yeah, and the fun blog posts are coming, right? The tech stuff that I don't understand, but the fun parts are coming now. So keep an eye on it.
And Alper, did you have anything you wanted to add to?
So maybe I can give some details on the repo level, like TerraJet 0.3.2 was released during this period in preparation for the announcement. And, before the announcements, we also worked on, finalizing the API groups and kind configurations, etc. This doesn't mean that we have configured each and every resource because there are hundreds of them, of course, but we tried to give the final shape, at least to the API groups. And we worked on adding some common referencer fields, to make the resources XRM compliant, etc. So we tried to close some open gaps before the announcement. And, because of these efforts, we had releases from the 3 Jet-based providers, namely Jet Azure, Jet AWS, and Jet GCP providers. And also, new Jet-based providers are also keep coming in. So I think Matthias can give a better insight here, but it looks like, people are really engaged in developing new providers using TerraJet. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alper. Yeah, and so Matthias, do you have a repo, or was it a docs page that had a list of a bunch of new providers that are coming out? Or I recall seeing something about that.
No, there's a link from Hassan that basically queries GitHub of what the previous of GitHub of readmes that contained our previous string. So nothing official. That said, I have a personal project called Awesome Providers. I'll link it in a second, but it's just for me to keep up to date. On that note, we'll definitely looking into making it more discoverable, of looking into providers and finding providers. So that's definitely something on our list. Nothing concrete there. If anyone has any thoughts, ideas, requirements, bring them along. But yeah, we will make them more discoverable for sure.
Yeah, that sounds great. And it's nice to see, a bit of more of the ecosystem coming up around these new capabilities of rapidly generating crossplane providers. So this is setting up a lot of pretty interesting things. So there's a couple of provider releases recently as well. So provider AWS had a 0.23 release since the last time we met. Christopher, do you want to, I think you drove that one. Do you want to give us a quick high-level update of what was included in that or things to note?
In general, thanks for Aaron to testing a lot of the merge requests from my side. Otherwise, we had not so much new CRDs available. But in general, Elastic Load Balancer is available now in the provider, and also a lot of more resources in the EC2 group. I think we see that fixing the problem in the code generator for EC2 or helps the folks a lot to generate more and more EC2 resources. And yeah, the rest of the fixes and so on are related to use the resources in composition that referencers, resolvers, and external name annotations working as expected. Yes, I think this is all. Nothing more really special.
That sounds good. Thanks for providing that update. And I like to see the number of new contributors to the repo as well in that release. So there's 6 different contributors that made their first change, first contribution to provider AWS in a release is pretty decent. So that's awesome to see. And Matthias, I got the link here to your repo, curated providers here. So I'll just make a, oh, you already put this in here. Perfect. Let's make that link. There we go. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, and then there's a couple of other releases of their provider Strio had a 0.2 release, and Jan and his team has been working on that pretty heavily. So that's good to see that functionality. And then there's an exascale provider as well. I think there's more that we'll see, maybe from Matthias's curated list there, but we'll continue calling them out in this community meeting as more of them are making progress. I think we kind of touched on a lot of the provider AWS and other native providers, the updates for that. But then, so it looks like we do have a quick update here for provider Azure on some new MRs, managed resources. Alper, do you want to add a little bit more details to that one?
Yeah, maybe since these were added by Sergen, he might want to talk more about them. What do you think, Sergen? Would you like to?
Sure. Actually, thank you, Alper. Actually, the two managed resources were added to the native provider, native Azure provider. The one of them is the DNS zone, and the another one is the DNS record set managed resources. And you actually they are alike, depends on each other. For example, firstly, after the creation a zone, you can add some record sets for these resources. Yeah, actually, that's.
Are those at a like a V1 Alpha 1 level now, since they've just been introduced?
Yes, they are in the V1 Alpha 1.
Got it. All right, awesome. Thanks for that contribution, Sergen. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you.
All right, so yeah, lots and lots of updates. You know, the community, it's growing, their velocity is picking up. We're making a ton of strides with providers, and then now focusing again on core Crossplane. So expect to see a whole lot going on in 2022. I think there's going to be a lot of progress in Crossplane and in the ecosystem in general. I put together a list of talks and blog posts and such over the last period since the last community meeting. We won't touch on every single one of them here, but as mentioned, with the TerraJet announcement, this is the collateral here that is directly related to that. You can watch the live stream that Victor and Moaf and Matthias did on Tuesday morning, I can't remember. But earlier this week, and so you can kind of relive their celebration there and then learn a lot more about the project as well. There was a lot of engagement from the community and people watching that live stream. So a lot of questions folks might have watching this as a resource to learn more and get some of the potentially common questions that are asked and answered in there might be a good experience for a lot of people that want to learn more. We've got some high-level blog posts about it, and then the first of a 3-part series blog post of a technical dive into different areas of the TerraJet project and then the providers that it enables. So there will be 3 different authors in those series. So Moafix is done. I think Hassan is doing part 2, and then Alper is doing part 3. So expect to see some more technical deep dives that kind of get through all of the different facets, areas, and components of the project there. And so there will be more to come. Aaron did some pretty interesting stuff, I think, with automated testing, unit testing and integration testing, I guess, sort of, but testing of Crossplane packages using some tools in the ecosystem and how to do test-driven development for Crossplane as well. So Aaron, do you want to add a little bit more details on that one, since I thought those were pretty interesting write-ups and something that I don't think people have been talking about before you did that write-up?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. This is kind of for me, the real big win as an SRE using Crossplane and using composition is this ability to finally say, hey, I got my managed resources in the state that I know I want. I've got my template. How can I codify that so that I don't need to I launch it to make sure that I didn't break my composition? So this is basically the ability to write a test that says, here is what I finally want deployed. And it also, I think, and I need to experiment with this, but I also believe this means it allows you to start editing a composition so that it better suits your internal processes when you're maybe not making an infrastructure change. Like you need to repackage something, you need to make something part of a different composite resource because a different team wants to own it, but you want to make sure the final product comes out the same. That's another nice thing you get if you start kind of test-driven development processes around your compositions rather than kind of I want to sculpt my infrastructure around what composite owns it. Instead, I'm sculpting my composites around process and the infrastructure can stay the same.
Yeah, it's an interesting new perspective that was at least new to me, Aaron. So I think that that's really cool from someone who is a platform engineer and, you know, building packages and using compositions to solve real problems. This is super interesting to kind of build out some of the capabilities for developing and testing and iterating. So this is really cool that you drove this, man. So there's 2 articles on that one. The first about how to do testing and then how to do test-driven development as well. Nate also put together a series of blog posts on sort of the basics of Crossplane and putting them together to start becoming effective as well as he's been ramping up in the ecosystem. So there's this, I linked one of them directly here, but that's the kind of the summary of his earlier posts. So you can go there and see the rest of the post for a kind of a journey through some of the basic concepts, and then this article here, putting them all together. So that's really helpful for people new to the community to kind of start learning more about some of the concepts and start their journey of education too. Let's see, what else? A couple of different talks and webinars that Victor has been doing recently. The CodeFresh one was probably particularly interesting to folks. And then another note here, there is an upcoming webinar. This one has not happened yet that I believe Grant Camina will be running. And so you can kind of learn more about some of the things that we're building within the community and then at Upbound specifically as well. And there's a link here to register if anyone is interested in that. So this is a big list of content and people talking, writing, recording things about Crossplane. I think I pretty much got most of the things that I'm aware of over the past couple of weeks. Some things could have slipped through the cracks. So if anybody knows of any other interesting content related to Crossplane, feel free to add it to the agenda doc and we'll get it merged in there. All right, so we're kind of nearing the end of the agenda. If folks had specific issues or pull requests or things that they wanted to bring up within this forum, go ahead and start thinking about those and getting them added to the agenda document now. Those slots are empty right now, so there is more time for those. I brought a couple of these guys up here I went through some recent Slack discussions and saw things that were maybe interesting to share here within this group. And so one thing I saw is that somebody was asking about running in a Windows environment. I have not done that myself. Dan, I think you kind of answered some of their questions there. What is the expectation for being able to run Crossplane in a Windows environment right now, if someone has a Windows machine?
I'm not exactly sure what this one specifically was referencing. We definitely publish Windows binaries for our CLI. And so, yeah, most of the time you're running Crossplane in a containerized process, which, we're not doing anything with Windows containers. So I think in this one, the installation script was just omitting a specific arch that was being sent back by the operating system. And so it was just a simple update where we had a binary that worked for them. It just wasn't being installed by the install script. So I don't think there's anything that should prohibit Windows users, though we do obviously test much less on Windows because most of the developers who work on Crossplane do not have Windows machines.
Grant could be our dedicated QA person for Windows. So the expectation is that, like from a client perspective, if you're using Kube Control, you want to use the Crossplane, CLI, you want to use the Kube Control plugin, etc. So Kube Control Crossplane from a Windows machine should be able to work now once you're installed, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome, very cool. And then server side, like if you have a cluster with Windows nodes in it, is there anything special that I really don't know anything about Kubernetes on Windows? I'm so sorry, but is there anything like special that needs to be done to enable that type of scenario? Are we agnostic to that? Do we not work in that scenario?
I don't think we'll work in that scenario.
Got it.
We omit, I'm just double checking here. We omit all Darwin and Windows builds for, well, that's actually just for images. So we do technically have a Crossplane binary, I believe, for Windows, but we don't have any images. So.
Not an image. Okay, cool. So like on a Windows node, if somebody was running like that, that there wouldn't be necessarily a container image to pull down and run on that node.
Correct. Yep. Got
it. Okay, that makes sense. Cool. And then somebody else had brought up something like a little bit of confusion that was in their mind around Crossplane packages and Helm charts. And so I just wanted to kind of clarify a little bit more for that. For other folks who had some confusion on it around, Crossplane packages, you can think about those as installing all of your types there, your CRDs, your composite resource definitions, your type system, and the capabilities of your control plane get installed through Crossplane packages. And then it's totally reasonable to use Helm charts to create instances and flow templated values into instances of those types. So that was a bit of confusion there about trying to use Helm to or packages to instances or Helm charts to do types, but it seems like a nice clear delineation between using packages to get the type system in place and using Helm charts to create instances is a totally reasonable separation. Dan, was there something else to add on that from that conversation that you had with the Slack member?
No, I think that was a pretty good summary there.
Awesome. Well, cool. Okay. So anything else that's going on for folks in the ecosystem community, things of interest that folks want to bring up while we're still together?
So Jared, maybe one final comment from me is, although it's not merged yet, maybe it's early to talk about it, but I'm not sure, just to make all the folks here available contributing to provider AWS, I'd like to mention it. As I mentioned, the pull request is under review in AWS controllers for Kubernetes CodeGen repository. And if it's accepted, as we suggested, it will, introduce a backward incompatible behavior change in the CodeGen that we are employing in provider AWS. The incompatible behavior changes, as of now, when you introduce a new API group, you need to create the API groups directory under APIs, and you need to provide a generator config YAML, generator-config.yaml file under v1 alpha 1 version directory. However, you would like to introduce, capability of configuring the generated version for the custom resource definitions. And, we would like to do this per resource. And for that reason, with that change, if it's accepted, it's already has an approval, but not merged yet. We will be moving the generator config.yaml files to the API root directory instead of the version directories. There's a draft PR open in provider AWS. Maybe we can also check that to get a glimpse of what will happen.
In provider AWS, there's a draft PR, Moafik?
It's from me.
It looks like that code generator PR from you is currently running the latest steps in the pipelines because it's approved, I think.
Yeah.
Tested this currently.
Yeah.
Is that this PR here, Alper? Am I on the right one on my screen?
Yes. Okay. Yes. This is the right one. And if you look at the files change section, you will see that we have moved generator config.yaml files to the API root directories, their parent directories. So what this implies is when we consume the new CodeGen, and if you are adding a new API group, then you will need to put the generator config YAML file under the API directory instead of v1 alpha 1 directory.
And is that okay? So that'll affect this repo. This makes all those movements, and then is there like documentation of the how to use ACK to generate new resources? Is that updated as well, so that folks following that guide will end up with things in the right place?
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. Thank you very much.
Awesome, cool. Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing that. Then I appreciate it. All right, so I think that's everything then for the agenda here. So I think we can go ahead and get wrapped up here and adjourn. So yeah, thanks everybody for showing up today here, and a whole lot of exciting things to keep rolling on for 2022, no doubt about it. So good to see everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.